McLaren, the team that shocked everyone last season, is now in big trouble. Behind the speed, behind the hype, something isn't right. New regulations, rising rivals, and pressure from every direction. Is McLaren about to lose everything they built? Let's break down why McLaren could be in serious danger. On the face of it, McLaren's double disqualification from the Las Vegas Grand Prix had the potential to be a serious blow to the title hopes of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. But with Norris holding a 24-point lead and Piastri tied with Max Verstappen, has the team's task in the F1 2025 title race just become more McLaren driver? Lando Norris can win F1 2025 title at Qatar Grand Prix. The one comfort for McLaren at least is that the blow of its double Las Vegas Grand Prix disqualification should be easily cushioned. Even with both cars excluded last weekend, Lando Norris still retains a very healthy 24-point lead in the championship with 2 races to go. And one of those races is this weekend in Qatar, a McLaren circuit if ever there was one, where the car's season-long advantage in medium-speed corners promises to be more potent than ever. And if Qatar doesn't quite go to plan, there is always Abu Dhabi, where Norris dominated from pole position to bring home last year's Constructors' title. So there is no need to panic. Not just yet. Not right now. No need to question whether it was tempting fate by printing all those Lando Norris 2025 World Champion t-shirts probably en route to Lusail right now. The title race has not just been blown wide open, as some have breathlessly claimed. Lando Norris versus Oscar Piastri, McLaren head-to-head scores for F1 2025. The great luxury of Norris and McLaren's dominance over recent weeks is that they can afford to suffer one, but only one, disaster and still get away with it. This is the advantage team and driver bought themselves in Mexico and Brazil. If there is a temptation to change anything at all at this stage, it might be to call off Oscar Piastri's title, hopes once and for all. Now, Verstappen is level on points with him and throw the entire team's support behind Norris for the last 2 rounds, just to be sure. Yet, the respective form of both drivers, Piastri somehow remains without a podium finish since his last victory at Zandvoort nearly 3 months ago. Means that situation is taking care of itself naturally anyway. It was only after qualifying that Andrea Stella, the McLaren team principal, was reflecting on the important investment the team had made to solve its performance issues in Las Vegas. McLaren, he said, had worked hard to understand the requirements of this circuit, both from a technical and driving perspective, having struggled in the first 2 editions of this event in 2023/24. Clearly something, potentially related to the lack of representative running in practice, went wrong, Stella pointing to unexpected levels of porpoising and an increase in the movement of the floor after both cars sustained accidental damage. It is nothing short of catastrophic, not to mention highly embarrassing, when any team, let alone one of McLaren's stature, sees both cars thrown out of a race. And as a result, the pressure and scrutiny on the team heading to Qatar is far higher than it should be. In Stella, though, McLaren has one of the calmest and studious minds in the pit lane to guide the team through it. His steady hand will never be more important than over the next few days. This will only become a season-defining blow if McLaren allows it to be. Reader reaction. Can McLaren see of the threat of Max Verstappen? The failure of McLaren to identify a number 1 driver was identified as a risk early this season. Now we see the results. Question. Max's only realistic hope is that Oscar drastically improves on his current form, and believes he still has a chance to become WDC and understands that Norris needs to be defeated one way or the other. But I don't have high hopes for that to happen. Jewel, I am curious if the chosen one at McLaren will keep his head straight at the next race. Something in me is saying that Lando will break and need a new pair of underwear Firestorm. While the DSQ of McLaren was a massive blow, it wasn't the end of the world, at least not for Norris. Despite him coming out with 0 points from Vegas, Norris has lost just 2 points to Verstappen in the last 3 GPs. In the meantime, Piastri's challenge has collapsed. 24 points with 2 races to go in a sprint is still good. All he has to do is stay out of trouble in the remaining races. Jojo, in reply to Firestorm, without the DSQ, Norris would have had one hand on the trophy, with a 30-point lead over his teammate. He would likely have wrapped up the championship in Qatar, as long as he didn't drop more than 5 points to Piastri or 17 to Verstappen. He's still the most likely to win the championship, but now it just takes a DNF or a big mistake and it could prove costly. The McLaren Revival, a victory for people power. To appreciate the significance of McLaren's first constructors' title in more than a quarter of a century, it is worth recalling the state the team were in when Zak Brown arrived in late 2016. As he explained in a recent interview, Brown found a place lacking just about everything required to make a successful F1 team. There was no structure, insufficient investment, an ancient wind tunnel and simulator, hardly any sponsors, a dissatisfied workforce, a dispute in the boardroom, and, to top it all off, an uncompetitive car. It was, in other words, a team that had lost all semblance of self-respect. McLaren's place on the F1 landscape had effectively been seized by Mercedes, who first came along to take their star driver, then their technical director, then their major sponsor before finally replacing their former partners as a regular race-winning, title-contending force. Ron Dennis, it had long become clear, had stayed too long for all the good he had done. Not that Brown has been perfect. There were times in the first couple of years when he carried the air of a superfan that got lucky, too willing to kneel at the temple of Fernando Alonso, who for all his skill was afforded a little too much power and influence for his team boss to be taken seriously. There have been signs of that naivety this year too. Brown reacting emotionally, disproportionately so, to the clashes between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, as if trying slightly too hard to present McLaren as a serious and sustained threat to Red Bull. As if trying to convince himself, everyone, that the world had finally righted itself on its axis, to this time make McLaren the new Mercedes, a decade after Mercedes became the new McLaren. His fellow team principals have often poked fun at the fan, sitting just below the surface, remarking that Brown would not recognize the front of a Formula One car from the back of one, even if he tried. Invariably, it is intended as an insult, but doesn't that actually highlight Brown's great strength? So the question is simple: is this just a small setback for McLaren, or the beginning of a major downfall? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoy sharp F1 analysis, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned with F1 Pulse Network, where Formula One never slows down.